Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, colleagues. On behalf of the New York Tri-State GERD Support, I welcome you to our third webinar, this time on the GERD Second Feeling, Joint Benefits, Challenge, and Outstanding Issues, which will be presented by Engineer Gideon Asfao, Chair of the Technical Team of the Ethiopian GERD Negotiating Committee. Let me in particular welcome some special guests. I think we have Ambassador Taye Askasselassie, Ethiopian Ambassador to the United Nations, Special Plenipotentiary. We also have some colleagues from the Sudan, as well as from Egypt, and various friends from various GERD support groups. We hope to make this 90 minutes webinar as interactive as possible. Engineer Gideon will take about 20 minutes to make his presentation, which will give us about 60 minutes for question and answers. I'll just make some introductory comments, as well as also just tell you about the webinar format. But before that, let me briefly explain what the New York Tri-State GERD Support is. It is a non-profit, non-political charitable organization established under New York State law to contribute to the development of Ethiopia by advancing the cause and mission of the GERD. This mission is to provide life-saving and life-changing affordable clean energy to over 60 million Ethiopians who today have no access to electricity, while GERD is also designed at the same time to assist our Nile Basin Sudanese and Egyptian neighbors to receive regular Nile water supply that is equally vital for their livelihood. It is this win-win mission of the GERD that our group strongly supports and will be presented today by Engineer Gideon. Our group has three objectives. First is to advocate the GERD's support and contribution to Ethiopia's overall development, and support the completion of the GERD construction based on the principle of fairness and equitable utilization of the Nile waters with no significant harm to downstream countries. Second, it is coordinating with network of diaspora groups to bring greater awareness and advance GERD and Nile knowledge base among the broader community. Here, joining us from the various GERD support groups in the United States, in Canada, and Europe, we encourage you to contact us so that we can coordinate out from each other. The third objective is mobilizing financial resources to contribute for the GERD, since the GERD is being financed entirely and exclusively by Ethiopians, including ordinary Ethiopians who have contributed their monthly salaries. As you know, in 2015, 193 countries, both developed and developing, adopted the historic and bold Sustainable Development Goals, popularly referred to as SDGs, that have 17 goals. One of the goals, or SDG 7, is called Affordable and Clean Energy for All, since over 790 million people, of whom 565 million are in Africa, are without any electricity. 60 million of our Ethiopian citizens and 17 million in Sudan do not yet have access to electricity. Fortunately, in the case of Egypt, 100% of its citizens have access to electricity. It is this accessibility that we are trying to encourage and support. There is actually a major concern internationally that this globally agreed energy for all targets by 2030 may not be reached. This is why Ethiopia's effort to provide electricity for its poorest 60 million citizens, funded entirely from its own resource, should be celebrated and strongly supported by all, and certainly should not be undermined. Now, let me go to the introduction of Engineer Gideon. Well, the most important qualification of Engineer Gideon, as far as I am concerned personally, which is not included in his CV, is he is my classmate from Tafarim O'Connell School, We were both in the same class. He graduated from there, and then he got his first degree from Haile Selassie University Faculty of Engineering in a BSc in Civil Engineering in 1973. After that, he attended the University of Stuttgart in Germany and got a Master of Science in Infrastructure Planning in 1985. Engineer Gedeon has over 45 years of working experience, which include work in rural development and water sector at the famous Chilalo Agricultural Development Unit, CADU, which most of you know. He was a Vice Minister of Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. He was also a technical advisor at the International Union for Conservation of Nature. He was a managing director of a water environmental consulting firm, and probably a very important responsibility he had. He was a project manager of the intergovernmental partnership of 10 Nile Basin countries called the Nile Basin Initiative, where he was stationed in Khartoum, Sudan for 6 years, with offices covering offices in 10 Nile Basin countries. Since 2011 up to now, Engineer Gedeon is involved in GERD negotiations. He was a lead member of the International Panel of Experts. He was a chairperson of the Tripartite National Committee of Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan, the TNC. He was also a chairperson of the National Panel of Experts. And then finally, his current responsibility as a chairperson of the technical team of the Ethiopian Negotiating Committee. Before I give the floor to Engineer Gedeon, we were hoping to have a representative from Sudan to perhaps kind of give us also some of their views regarding the GERD. And recently I came across a very, very important interview that Dr. Othman El Tom Hamad, the former Minister of Irrigation and Water Resources of Sudan, gave to Dialogue Horizon Sudan TV, which is very, very instructive. So let's listen to that for about 4 minutes.
Dr. Othman El Tom Hamad, the former Irrigation Minister, and before that he worked since his graduation, the first year in graduation, he started in the Ministry of Irrigation in the dams till he became the Minister of Irrigation 2 years ago. Welcome, Dr. Othman El Tom. We are very glad to have you.
Sudan has been studying this for a very long time now, since that report came up in 1964, just at the time when Egypt was building the High Aswan Dam. Some people link the two issues together. And Engineer Sairun Zain, the late Sairun Zain, has done a lot of studies when we were young.
He was a Minister of Irrigation.
Yes. Okay. And at that time we joined him, myself and some other young engineers at the time. And the conclusion of that, any hydropower generation dams in Ethiopia are beneficial to Sudan because they regulate the flow. Now, this is true for the GERD, and if the other 3 dams are built, that would be for the benefit of Sudan, because the flow in the Blue Nile after GERD will be a constant, more or less constant flow of 130 million cubic meters per day. So it will just be like the High Aswan Dam for Egypt. And since you have this regular flow, then you don't need to store a lot of water in all of our dams. We can operate our dams at a lower level, especially Roseros and Marawi. And even Jabal Awliya, you don't need to store a lot of water in it because of the high evaporation there. And even in the High Aswan Dam, you don't need to reach the high levels. Now, the High Aswan Dam, the evaporation losses this year are 14 billion cubic meters because the level is very high nearly the top of the minimum of the maximum operation level. And so you can, since you have a constant flow of water, then all the dams can be operated at a lower level.
Optimum level.
Yes, at an optimal level. For the High Aswan Dam, I have done some work on that one. For the High Aswan Dam, you can operate it even 15 meters below the current level. And when that happens, then the area north of Dal, which is called Akasha, it will be, the water will recess from that area. That area is a delta now. A lot of silt has deposited in that one, and some people say about 50,000 hectares or 50,000 faddans. Very fertile land. And if the system is operated in such a way that the dams starting from GERD up to the High Aswan Dam, they are operated as one system, then you can do that. You can lower the level in the High Aswan Dam by 15 meters, and then that will decrease the evaporation losses. Instead of 14 now, it will be only 8. So you are saving 6 billion cubic meters, while the storage in GERD is going to consume only the evaporation losses, which is only 2.
Only 2.
Only 2.
2 billion.
So you are gaining, so you are gaining already about 4 billion cubic meters for the system. Other than that, Jabal Awliya can be at a lower level, as I said, Rusairis, and also the Marawi. You can save another 2 billion cubic meters with this system. So you are gaining. Another thing, if you allow me.
Okay, sure.
The dams, the future dams that will be built or was supposed to be built in Sabaloga, Shirek, Dal, and Kajbar, you don't need them as reservoirs now. You can build them as barrages, only just to raise the level,
to raise the level
within the channel itself. Okay. So you are not going to cover any of the floodplain. The water will be only within the channel, and then from that one you can take canals to both sides for the higher terraces. You cannot imagine that those lands are flat, just waiting for water. Very fertile, very flat lands, and they extend between 5 kilometers from the bank to 15 kilometers in some places. So this area can be green around, starting from north of Khartoum up to Dal. This area can be in the future, can be something that is green throughout.
So you are this reminds me of what Dr. Hamdouk said. So you are enhancing his argument when he said he abolished, or they are not going to build the proposed dams for power.
So with these introductory comments, let me invite Engineer Gideon to give us his presentation, and then after that we'll have questions and answers. So Engineer Gideon, most welcome, please.
Thank you, Dr. Busrat, for the kind introduction, and thank you for the organizers for inviting me to this webinar. Distinguished participants, I see one of the participants among you, His Excellency Ambassador from Russia, who brought me into this job in 2011, is with us. I just talked to him on the phone, but now is fortunate he's among us. Atalamayo Taganu. He's the one who recruited me into this assignment in 2011, and it's nice to note that he is among us. So my presentation this evening would, let me put it on, I believe it is visible now.
Yes.
This is the outline I'm going to present to you. A bit of the context in which this negotiation is being conducted. We'll go into the GERD layout, progress, and first filling. First filling consists of the first stage filling and the second stage filling also. This first filling is up to the level of 625 above sea level, which will take some 5 or 6 years. Joint benefits and a little bit on the concerns of downstream countries. I'll also deal with the negotiation process and the challenges we're facing in this process, and I have a few key messages as a conclusion. Well, as a start, the context in which we are conducting this negotiation, the very purpose of the Renaissance Dam, Dr. Busrat has alluded to the purposes also. But if you see now the 10 or 11 Nile Basin countries indicated here, except Egypt, this is a 2010 data, there isn't much difference now in terms of electricity consumption. You see the only country which is close to 1,800 kilowatt hour per year per capita consumption is only Egypt. The rest of the Nile Basin countries are below the 500 kilowatt hour per year per capita minimum consumption for reasonable quality of life. Ethiopia, you see, the consumption on average is between 70 and 100 kilowatt hours per year per capita. And of course, this is taking the average. Those of us who have fridge, all the convenient electrical equipment that raise our consumption rate. But if you take the 80 or 90% of the farmers, which they do not have any electrical appliances, they're not counted into this. They don't even have one light bulb. So that is what the 65 million Ethiopians are included. These averages will give you a wrong message. Even this 100 kilowatt hour per year per consumption is for those who have. The have-nots do not have any 0.1 kilowatt hour of consumption. So the story is different. For you see the pictures here on the right side. That's the energy that they are using: cow dung, forest products, and the like. And you see a very in any rural area, you see a line of tankers, small jerrycans, day in and day out because of energy poverty, that access to water also is minimal in many parts of. This is the context that really why we are building the GERD, why will be continuing to build other dams for energy production. It's not to harm anyone, but to take our fair share of the Nile waters and develop. On the other side, you see, if you look at the 1959 agreement, Egypt has self-allocated 55.5 billion cubic meters per year, and Sudan 18.5, evaporation 10. This is on average, and Ethiopia and the other 8 countries, Upper Nile countries, they are allocated 0. This is another context that we are under when we conduct this negotiation also. And in terms of irrigation also, Egypt and Sudan have managed over 2 million hectares of irrigation. And beyond that, if you see the Sinai development, the Al Salam Canal, if you see the again into Toshka. This is out of the Nile Basin. This is inter-basin transfer. And other stakeholders are being involved in developing the Sinai, in developing the Toshka project also. The Middle East investors are also involved in this. So this is the context in which you see the flood irrigation in Egypt, flood irrigation in Sudan. Again, beyond and above what is wasted in Hayaswan Dam. The gentleman from Sudan, my friend Osman, has said this up to 14 billion cubic meters of water is being wasted every year through evaporation, without counting what is wasted in terms of inefficiency in the use of irrigation projects in the desert areas also. So what we're saying is that people also, they say Nile is the only source for the two countries. Indeed, they are heavily dependent on the Nile, but they shouldn't. They shouldn't be. That's what we're saying. They should reduce their reliance on the Nile. They should use groundwater. They should use desalination, which infinite supply of water those countries have. They have to increase their water use efficiency and stop building dams and unnecessary water guzzling agriculture in the desert areas, so that they would reduce their dependence on the Nile, and so that the other upper basin countries will have their fair share of the Nile. So this is the context in which we are negotiating on GERD. Again, the other context, as I've indicated, the major contributor to the Nile is Ethiopia, 77 billion cubic meters on average annually. From Baro Akobo, 13.5 billion cubic meters. From Takaze, 11, and Blue Nile, 49 BCM on average. And Dindir and Rahad, 3 billion cubic meters. So, as measured at Aswan, we contribute 86%, and that we are allocated 0. This is the unfair, unjust situation, status quo, to which the international community has turned a blind eye to this situation, and always raising the issue of the dependence of the downstream countries on the Nile, and the narrative, which is always we hear on the big media houses, is that the other countries shouldn't use the Nile water equitably, but release all the water to the downstream countries, which is unacceptable. As you see in this graph, most of the water we are getting in all the basins from rainfall is from July to October, and the rest of the months are dry, as you see in the graph. So it's a legitimate step that we're taking, storing the water between July and October, and use it during the dry period. That is one of the purpose of the Renaissance Dam. Store water during plenty and use it during drought times or dry times. So let me go into the GERD overall for those who are joining us now, not have heard my presentation in the last presentation I made at the other forums. This is the overall layout. You see here the reservoir at full supply level, in which case will store 74 billion cubic meters, and the reservoir stretches to up to 246 kilometers. And this has implication on for economic development. And the overall layout is, this is the main dam, roller compacted dam, concrete dam, and the two powerhouses. On the left side, 2,400 megawatts, 6 turbines. On the right, 2,750 megawatts, 7 turbines. All in all, we have 13 turbines producing installed capacity of 5,150 megawatt and generating on average 15,692 gigawatt hour. On the left side, you see another big dam, the Saddle Dam, which is 5.2 kilometers long and 50 meters height. Also by itself a big dam, and we have 3 spillways, the low block here and the gated spillway here, and there is also an emergency spillway on the Saddle Dam. So this is the overall configuration and layout of the Renaissance Dam. Give you a brief on the current progress. You see overall, this is some months back, it's 79% complete. I think recently it is about 80% complete overall. The civil works, the main dam, the shoulder dam, the spillways, 91% complete. The hydro steel structure, 52.3% complete. Electromechanical, 52.4%. And the Saddle Dam, this is a huge structure. This is 14 million cubic meters of rock and concrete. That is 100% complete. And here you see a very important structure, the transmission line. That is from the GERD site to Holota, the central station, 650 kilometers, 100% complete about 2-3 years ago. So as soon as we start producing energy, the outlet, the main transmission line is complete. So that can go into the central grid. This is a very important step that the dam owner has taken. Instead of waiting until the completion of the dam, they have completed also the transmission line, which is a very necessary structure to take energy into the central grid and also to neighboring countries also. Let me talk now the second impoundment is one of the topics of our discussion. I don't know why the dam is not appearing here, but let me take the cross section. This is how the second year impoundment is taking place. Now, as you have seen, the main dam, the right and the left abutment, they are at the final level of 645 meters above sea level. And here is the low block, which is now at 565 meters above sea level. The idea is this part of the colored part you see, this is the assignment now being undertaken by the project contractors to take it from this level by 30 meters to 595 meters, by 30 meters, to raise the low block. And on the right side and left side of the low block, they have to raise it up to 609 or 606, and in this part 609 meters above sea. This means now it is 65 meters from the bottom of the dam. It is 65 meters. They are going to raise it to 95 meters height. In the last rainy season, the overflow you see through the low block is at 565 meters. So the next filling, the second filling, which will come in July, August And if the hydrology is good, it will be also extended into September. So the overflow you will be seeing next time will be over the 595. Now you see in these two bottom outlets, in the video you saw earlier, they used these two bottom outlets to lower the level to 577, 557 by 3 meters from 560, so that they can be able to work on the low block. So they are now doing that, raising the low block to 595, so that the next level they will store additional 13.5, which will bring the total storage to 18.4 billion cubic meters. That's quite a volume. This is when they will start testing the turbines, the two early generation turbines, and also because the turbines, the penstocks are at 545, the center line for this red, these are the penstocks taking the water to the powerhouse. Since they are at 545, we'll have about 50 meters head, so that we can also test the rest of the 13 turbines also. This is what will happen in July and August in the coming 2 months. They are now under construction to fill the concrete in this colored part. This will be a placement of about 1.5 million cubic meters of concrete. So they will have to manage this in the coming 2.5 months to fill this part of the concrete in the coming 2 or 2.5 months, and then they will be able not only pass the water through the bottom outlets, but also, like we have seen in the first filling, it will be overflowing through the pipe above the 595 mark in the low block. So this is the overall filling schedule. This filling schedule was formulated by 15 experts from Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. You know, the 9 ministers, these ministers from water affairs, foreign affairs, and also directors of intelligence. We call it the 9 Ministers Forum. They appointed 15 hydrologists, water resource modelers, and in 2018, they worked on this together, and they came up with filling a schedule as you see it in this table. So what is baffling is that while their experts have agreed to this filling schedule, now we hear a lot of noise that this will harm Sudan and 20 million people Sudanese. The experts wouldn't have agreed if this kind of retention of water annually would have posed any threat to the citizens of Sudan or to the citizens of Egypt. These are very well-known experts from the 3 countries who managed to come up with this filling schedule. So one aspect is that. The other aspect is we have already agreed in 2015 that the construction is inseparable with the filling. This has been signed by the leaders of the 3 countries, that the process of filling is inseparable from the construction of the GERD. This has been signed by the leaders of the country. So these are the 2 key elements that would allow Ethiopia to proceed with the filling of the dam with no additional agreement. So we've been telling this to the international community. We are proceeding with the filling based on these legal provisions in the Declaration of Principles and technical provisions that the 3 countries have agreed with. So this is important to note that Ethiopia does not need any additional agreement to proceed with the filling until the completion of the filling in the next stages also. So after 595, you see the next year we'll go to 608 gradually. We'll retain 10.5 billion cubic meters. And the next after we'll go to 617, and then 625 is the optimum level where we have agreed that at this level, this is where the operation starts, where this is the mark where filling stops and annual operation starts at 625. So our dam will operate between 625 and 640, generating energy, the average 15,700 or so annually, by operating between 625 and 640 also. The simulation, you can see on the right side how the reservoir area will increase as we increase the level in the dam. You see at 560 now, that is how the reservoir looks like from space. And as you proceed to 595, that is the area it will cover. And this you find also from area volume curve at each level, what area and what volume is retained in the Renaissance Dam. You see at 625, as I said, will retain 43.9 billion cubic meters. This is what we call the optimum level, the optimum operation level, where we complete the filling of the Renaissance Dam and start the normal operation of our dam. And at 640, you see on the right side, this is what we call the full supply level. And the area will be around 1,800 square kilometers, and backwater 246 or 250 kilometers, and the volume will be 74 billion cubic meters at full supply level. But always it fluctuates between 625 and 640, generating the planned annual energy in this manner. You see, in terms of benefit, is the major one is for us this annual generation, to which we can export part of it, and we can also use part of it for local consumption. And due to this energy, of course, water transport, other as a development corridor also, fishery, other investment, townships will come, research and universities will be opened. Already quite a large facilities for the operators is in place. So a lot of development activities will be in the area of the reservoir and buffer zone, and this reservoir will have about 70 islands. These islands are now marked as a center for tourism and other investments also. So this area will be a development corridor because of the GERD also. And because of this volume, the per capita storage capacity of Ethiopia will increase by about 800 meter cube artificially stored water. And this is also seen as a measure of water security, that the capacity to store water. So this substantially will increase the storage capacity of Ethiopia. And again, there are a number of benefits for Sudan, and as my colleague Dr. Osman Altom explained briefly, the benefits are huge, and these benefits have been monetized and also calculated by economists the damage due to floods, and that has been also, huge benefits due that Sudan will accrue, and without even building any infrastructure, energy uplift of existing dams like Rosaries and Sennar and Merowe, they can generate up to more than 2,000 gigawatt hour per year energy. This is quite, you can estimate it in hundreds of millions of dollars, and the benefit for Sudan. And they do know, and it's good that Dr. Bistrat started this webinar on a positive tone from our Sudanese colleague. And there are professionals in Sudan, in Egypt, that really see the beneficial side of the Renaissance Dam and its contribution for regional integration. And the dams now existing in Sudan and Egypt, they waste a lot of water through evaporation also. Even in High Aswan Dam, about 30 billion cubic meters is reserved for flood. They no more have to do that. They can utilize that part of the reservoir to store water, and they no more have to the flood reserve empty space to do in High Aswan Dam. So there are a number of benefits that can be looked at from the financial benefits if you monetize each of the benefits in this manner. Now, throughout this negotiation, Sudan's concern include about dam safety, the filling and operation of GERD, and the release of water, the change in water quality, reduction in irrigation agriculture, reduction also on the brick industry. They have, based on the sediment that is going from the Ethiopian highland. And as we have heard, they have already taken some measures to address this negative impact. So, of course, a project of this size will have some negative impacts, but all are mitigable. All these negative impacts can be addressed. For example, the water quality, we have already more than 30–40% of the area have been cleared. Their concern was the methane that will be transported downstream if the vegetation was not cleared. But there is a plan to clear all the area, 1,800 kilometers square, phase by phase, and that activity is still going on. So there won't be any significant problem related to water quality. Dam safety, we have addressed it adequately, and I have visited the GERD site starting from, the first removing of the topsoil for foundation. They have seen the foundation. They have assigned their own professors on geophysics and foundation engineers. There were 10, including international experts, that came when we did the foundation. And they have testified that the GERD is situated in an area where there is no earthquake problem. The nearest epicenter is some 600 kilometers away from GERD, unlike the High Aswan Dam and other Sudanese dams. So this has been the geophysics department of the university has done work on that, and their own experts were on site. And we commissioned 10 experts on geophysics and dam safety to work on this, and they have produced the report. So that concern has also been addressed. Well, on the Egyptian side, it's as you always, you have heard their complaint on the 1959 agreement, where their allocation will be harmed. The only problem with this is that Ethiopia since 1956-57, in all subsequent governments, during the imperial government, during the DER government, during the the past government also. Official letters have been deposited at the UN, World Bank, and have been communicated to the foreign affairs of Egypt, Sudan, that we do not recognize the 1959 agreement. This is on record. So actually, we cannot abide by this bilateral agreements, which does not include Ethiopia also. And we hear complaints that the fait accompli complaints, you have heard it all over recently. Ethiopia is making fait accompli the GERD. Yes, we will continue making fait accompli many dams, not only the GERD. That is the right of a sovereign state within its territorial area to develop its water resources based on internationally accepted principles of no significant harm and equitable utilization. So within that, in the last 5,000 years, many fait accompli projects in Egypt and Sudan. Nobody told us when they built the dam. Nobody shared information with Ethiopia or any of the upper states on what we have been doing in the Nile Basin, foreclosing all development projects in upper basin states. When we ask to use the water for irrigation, they're telling us where are we going to bring the water? It's already finished. Should we accept that? And that is unjust, unfair, and I think the international community should look at this unjust status quo and advise our brothers and sisters in the downstream countries this is unjust and they should come to an equitable utilization of the Nile waters. But one worry we understand that this will create precedents for other Nile Basin countries to self-finance projects like Ethiopia. Well, I think that is a good move. And I see that this will happen anyway, whether we like it or not. Population increases and will double our population in one generation time. So who is going to tell these people not to use the water? No government can do that. No country can do that. So ultimately, unilateral projects will come, and this will not be sustainable for all of us. We need a rule-based management of the Nile Basin water. And our advice to Sudan and Egypt is to join the cooperative framework agreement. 4 people have ratified it, and 6 people have accepted and signed. So whenever 2 countries ratify, the Nile Basin Commission will come into effect. So it will be good for the 2 downstream countries to consider this path. The negotiation process, I do not want to take much time on this, but we started, as I said, in 2011 with the International Panel of Experts, to which I was one of the 2 Ethiopian representatives, and we also hired 4 consultants, international consultants from Germany, a dam engineer, and England, a socio-economist, from France, environmentalist, and hydrologist from South Africa. These 10 people studied and presented their document to their respective ministers. And that is one of the basic document which we refer to in this negotiation, because this was a tripartite committee from the 3 countries that produced the document also. And then we established to implement the recommendation of the IPOE. In 2013, 2016, we have been negotiating throughout these 3-4 years to conduct 2 additional studies recommended by the IPOE, despite our submission of a report on downstream impact, but they didn't accept it because it was done by one country. Okay, we said, well, the three countries can commission a study, but we never came to an agreement on the baseline. The baseline, they are saying, the consultant was saying the baseline would be the current agreement of Sudan and Egypt. How can we accept this when three successive governments' policy was not to accept 1959 agreement? That's why the study was discontinued. If you measure impact from the current use, that will not be favorable to Ethiopia. This is an obvious reason why the study was discontinued. Again, then we focused on the filling and operation. As I said, I showed you, this National Independent Scientific Research Group came up with that filling schedule. There is no signature. Egypt refused to sign, but accepted the filling schedule, and it is included in their agreement, in Sudan's agreement, and in Ethiopia's agreement. That table is in all the three countries' draft agreement. So that is accepted by the three countries. We are using that to fill our dam. Again, when this was not successful, they went to the General Assembly, as you noted, and it is Egypt who requested the intervention of the United States. We accepted the invitation, and we requested for the US and the World Bank to act as observers, but we noted during the process that was not kept as observers. So we had to really discontinue the Washington process. And we noted that our national interest was not really taken care of, and we have the right to withdraw. So we withdraw from the Washington process on this. And then after the COVID, the recommendation of Ethiopia to come back to the African Union involvement, starting from July 3 up to now, we are under the AU auspices, including the recent April meeting in Kinshasa. So we're still under the AU process, and we're hoping after the visit of His Excellency the President of DRC, the recent visit, so we will resume our negotiation under the AU process. Some of the issues, one of the sticking issues, upstream development, we say we have equitable share from the Nile resources, as we contribute 86% of it. We shouldn't be constrained to drought thresholds that we are mentioning in this agreement. If we say we release such amount of water during drought, that shouldn't be taken as indicator of significant harm. We can't incriminate ourselves that by agreeing on some threshold that we're saying this is an indicator of significance. That cannot be. And we have a right, we're saying, to adjust these thresholds, because whenever we do some development upstream, you know, the upstream of GERD is 172,000 square kilometers. This is twice the area of Portugal, and this equivalent to area of California. And if we are curtailed from developing this area with the major tributaries, about 12 tributaries feeding into the Blue Nile, if we can't develop this area, we're foregoing the current and future generation right of the Ethiopians. So this is the main stumbling block in the negotiation. They want the 1959 share to be respected. They want also prior notification. They want us to ask their permission to develop projects upstream of GERD. So prior notification, we have to get no objection from the downstream countries. We are not agreeing to this provisions of prior notification. And the operation aspect is related to these types of water sharing agreement. So we are proposing to them, let's agree on the first filling, and then during the coming 5 years, we'll agree on the operation aspect. the other issue is drought management. Again, we say this is a drought is a natural phenomenon, and there is shared responsibility. It is the three countries who should contribute in withstanding the impacts of drought, not only GERD, not only Ethiopia. In Egypt, they have a drought management policy. When drought came in the 1980s, they reduced the release from Hayaswan Dam from 5% up to 15% to manage drought. So they have to invoke these kinds of drought management policy along with the share of Ethiopia's drought management policy also. In 1980, no person died in Egypt and Sudan, while millions died at the source of Nile also, because we didn't have any storage, we didn't have any irrigation to address drought. So that is one of the purposes of storing water also behind the GERD. We say data exchange, it should be reciprocal. Egypt does not agree with the reciprocal data exchange. They say, you give, we don't give. That is unacceptable also. In any transboundary management, data exchange is reciprocal, and they should agree to this reciprocity of data exchange. We say during the operation, the feeling should be, both Sudan and Egypt agree that it must be as the table you saw earlier, the refilling should follow that, but then Egypt says you should follow a reduced rate of filling. Again, there is no agreement on this. Dispute resolution, they ask for binding agreement, and we ask binding as per the declaration of principles. These principles have been signed by the heads of state, and there is no arbitration clause in the declaration of principles. And binding arbitration is being requested by both Egypt and Sudan, and that's not according to the DOP. And if you want to go into arbitration, then we'll have to have a water sharing agreement. We'll have to know our own quota, our share of water that would also give us the share of the Nile water. And then that can proceed in that manner when we know our share. Without knowing our share, we don't want to go into this binding agreement. So these are the issues. And I want to thank all these people behind us. You only see some of us on TV, some of us on webinars, but there are a number of Ethiopians who are behind the negotiating team, who are providing services, advisors in all sorts of professions. And I'd like to thank them to the audience of this webinar. And also Dr. Basrat and your organization will also provide such kind of assistance in terms of knowledge, in terms of financial support also for the GERD. This is what happens in terms of negotiation, that we're not alone. There are a number of professionals behind us working free of charge. And I'd like to thank my colleagues here also. There are others also. Dr. Basrat, I've taken more time than provided, but let me just run quickly through the key messages I have, if you allow me.
Yes, please.
What we want to underline is Ethiopia has the right to use its water resources on the basis of equitable and reasonable utilization and not causing significant damage. This is our baseline. Agreement on guidelines and rules on filling and annual operation should not be mixed up with water sharing and allocation. We should be focused on filling and operation. And water sharing is a separate treaty that we want this to happen after the filling and operation agreement. We want to resolve the outstanding issues through the AU-led process. No Security Council, no quartet, not useful, I mean. We're doing good. We should proceed in this manner with good faith negotiation, and these issues can be resolved among the three countries. And we have to ensure Ethiopia's current and future generative rights. That is our red line. that will not sign any agreement that will compromise the rights of current and future generations of Ethiopians. That we cannot cross. We have to ensure development upstream of GERD. That should be protected also. As I've told you, 172,000 square kilometer of basin, Blue Nile Basin, we have to develop it. One point that I do not agree with my friend Osman Altom. We have worked together for the last 15 years. He stated that there is no irrigation possibility in the Blue Nile, but there is close to 900,000 hectares of irrigation potential is available. So we need to develop that also. Full operational flexibility of the GERD, that also another red line. We designed it, we constructed it to give us 15,700 gigawatt hours per year. That should happen. And this flexibility of operating the dam, we should not be denied in this agreement. So one of the areas is flexibility of operation. And we need to take practical measures, develop hydropower. We have 4 dams upstream of the GERD that can produce 40,000 gigawatt hours of energy, 11,000 megawatts that can produce that. So this potential should be exploited, and we have to develop those. And most of all, you see on the right side of this slide, this is a dam built by an NGO. It is feeding at Gohasion to the Blue Nile. It is already filled in about 5-6 years. Now the cattle is grazing instead of storing water. This is a huge problem we'll be facing, controlling sediment and soil erosion. We have to build capacity. I hope your organization will help in this aspect. We have to involve universities. We have to bring up new generation of negotiators. I and Dr. Bisrat will not be. we have to have new young blood into coming into defending the rights of Ethiopia, not only in the Blue Nile, but in the Wadi Shabelle, in the Rift Valley, in the Baro Akobo, in the Omo Give, even in Awash we have been recently challenged. So although it is an internal basin, so we have a lot to do in this field, and of course soliciting support from you and the Ethiopian community abroad is essential. I'm sure that's why your organization is there, and hopefully that assistance will continue. Dr. Bisrat, I'm sorry I've taken more time than allocated. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, let me really profoundly thank you, Engineer Gideon. This was very, very thorough and very informative, even though it took a little bit longer, but I think we've benefited from this presentation, so we really thank you. I know that time is a bit of a constraint for some of our special guests. In particular, Ambassador Taye was planning to attend only the first 15 or 20 minutes, but I believe he's still around. So if he is, I would like to give him a minute or so, if you could say a few words, and followed by, I believe also Ambassador Mulu from Germany has been participating, and also like to give her the opportunity to just say a few words, and then we'll open it for question and answers. Ambassador Taye.
Good afternoon and good evening from those who are participating from Ethiopia. Well, first of all, my appreciation and thanks for the New York Tri-State GERD support group for organizing this webinar. And also my appreciation to Dr. Gideon Asfaw, one of our engineers who have been involved in the process of negotiation for quite some time. I would say probably for a little bit over maybe 2 decades with his colleague, the one whom we saw in the picture earlier. I was just jiggling in between meetings, and I won't take that much time. But the context that he has put was indeed very correct, because the reason why we're building the Grand Renaissance Dam is just to extricate people from poverty. It is part of the, to ensure accessible and affordable energy to our people, because it means everything. We have said time and again how important and even determinantal an existential issue for Ethiopia and its people. So 65 million people don't have any source of energy because we don't have electricity that runs in our houses. Energy is a key to every development issue, be it health, agriculture, water, what have you, industries and manufacturing, including job creation. So one of the issues that we highlighted last time when we had our debate at the Security Council was that indeed we have to ascertain to the international community that we are building the GERD just to develop our society so that we can have a decent life like the rest of the world. So the context that he has put was indeed correct. One of the contexts also that we have to look is that some countries fear that the GERD will completely reconfigure the geopolitical setting of the entire region. We didn't have any intention whatsoever to be, a country that determines the fate of our brothers and sisters. We're just building it to generate electricity. Some might consider it, some saw it as a threat to their national security, but it's not. We have said time and again in many of our meetings that this is not the case. But having said that, I for one see that there is light at the end of the tunnel right now as we speak, because we're not going to sit down and negotiate for eternity. And an endless negotiation means nothing. So some of our proposals regarding a phased approach is getting some traction within the international community. That's why I say that we are seeing a big daylight at the end of the light. So we are working along that line, and that phased approach would indeed be to the benefit of all of us. And we have said time and again that bringing the issue to the UN Security Council is just completely a futile exercise. It won't benefit anyone. It's not the issue as a sui generis, as a fact, but in the first place, it's not a security matter. And secondly, many countries don't want this file in the Security Council because it's going to, as I said it in the Security Council last year, it's going to open a Pandora box. If it is raised on GERD, who's going to be spared out of it? Many will follow. Many environmental issues, not only water issues, will follow that trail. So nobody wants to accept that. So I believe that Ethiopia, Egypt, probably Sudan, according to Dr. Osman, who spoke in the interview with good faith, definitely will gain from an open, frank, and candid approach of the issue. And having said that, from our side, we shall never get ourselves in the rigidity of the past. We have to move forward. Otherwise, we'll end up to be a prisoner of the past. And finally, let me share you one experience I had while I was serving in Egypt, very briefly for a year and a half. And one Good Friday afternoon, I was, with my good friend, water minister of Egypt. We're crossing the Nile by boat. And all of a sudden, after we went probably about 15 minutes, and that boat was capsized, hit, a sediment. And then, of course, we couldn't push it back, we couldn't move forward, we're just stuck, it looks like, for eternity. Sadly, I don't know how to swim. I'm a Highlander. I don't know how to swim, and I was just a little bit scared, as he did as well. But what we discussed at that particular point is that the entire Nile basin, even in Cairo and the surrounding areas, is just full of sediments. I wonder how much money they spend to remove these sediments every year. I believe it's in the hundreds, if not hundreds, in the 50, 60, 70, even more millions to remove the sediments. So one of the benefits that we're talking is that the Grand Renaissance Dam could help in trapping sediments as well. So that's just reflecting some of my memories. But there is a lot of benefits, so to say, if we closely work together. And of course, some countries might seek a kind of a face saving, but just forget the face saving. Out of this arrangement, we all can win together. So thank you again. Thank you for giving me the time to address this respected webinar, and my sincere appreciation for the organizers. And I see some of my colleagues, all protocols observed. Thank you and have a great day. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Taye. I'm not sure whether Ambassador Mulu is still around, but in the meantime, let me give the opportunities.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. I'd like to thank you, Engineer Gideon, for his presentation. It was very educational. Given that we started with Dr. Osman's presentation, I was pleasantly surprised by his presentation in tone. And if this is true, are there professionals in Egypt as well that have similar thoughts that are not expressed in terms of the true nature of the issue? And I have a quick question to Engineer Gideon, that based on all the experience that you have, as time goes on, are we getting closer or further and further away from resolving this issue? Or is it likely that the GERD will be operational before we even get an agreement?
As Dr. We just heard Excellency Ambassador Taye that we are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. I do agree with him that the proposal we have made some months ago to agree on the first filling up to 625 meters above sea level. That would take us some 5 years or so. And then consider the more complex operational issues that are related to water sharing during these 5 years. So a phased approach seems to be a feasible approach that would give us opportunity to build confidence and trust, and also do our filling with this agreement also. So if that comes to fruition, then, which is, I think, on the table now, then I see a possibility of the three countries resolving the issue with the first peeling agreement. And then we'll handle the other complex issues in the next phase.
Mr. Yusuf?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I'm grateful to all for to the organizer. My quick question is, collectively, all the Nile Basin countries, if there is any agreement for environmental degradation simultaneously to maintain any environmental degradation.
In 2009 or in 2008, I remember when I was working in Khartoum, all the ministers of the 9 countries, members of the Nile Basin, agreed on the Khartoum Declaration on the Environment. That is now in the back burner. I have not heard being mentioned, but the environment-specific agreement was signed at the ministerial level. Ministers of Environment signed that agreement. I think we should bring it up because all governments have subscribed to it. Other than that, there are in this agreement to conduct an environment and social impact assessment study, the one which is discontinued because of the reasons I told you. So we might proceed with that study also. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take the privilege of being the moderator to ask a question, Engineer Gideon. It's regarding really like most dams, when dams are constructed, there is some sort of displacement that happens to people whose livelihood depends either on farming or livestock in the area. Could you give us a sense of really the community that has been affected by the GERD and what can be done, what can we do to assist in that?
Well, since you gave me some indication of this question, let me this is just one slide, and we have reviewed this study, Resettlement Action Plan, Volume 1 and Volume 2, done by the dam owner, and this is has international standard also, follows the World Bank Resettlement Action Plan. And that study concluded the project affected persons are about 20,000 only, and about 5,000 households. And that area has a very low density, 10 people per square kilometer. When you compare this to Highest One Dam, the affected people were more than, I think, close to 120, 150,000 people. So this area is sparsely populated, and the implementation, I got this information a little while ago, but they have implemented most of the recommendations of these studies, and they have built schools, centers, training centers, and residential houses. And these activities, about 70% has been completed. And out of the 5,390 households, about 4,360 have been settled. And you see the existing houses and the facilities which the project have been built on the right side of the screen. So this is just a summary that a detailed study on compensation based on each household have been done, and that is in the process of implementation. Thank you.
Yes, in fact, the reason why I'm asking is, when I used to work on Sudan, there is the area called New Halfa, which is resettled about 50,000 Nubians who were displaced when the Aswan Dam was built, from Wadi Halfa in the north. And that was a major effect, which, of course, had to be dealt with. I mean, it's very fortunate that in this case we have only 5,000 households, but whatever could be done to assist, they have really given up for the GERD. I think it would be a great initiative. Yes, go ahead, Ato. Yeah.
Thank you. I would like really to thank you, Mr. Gideon and the organizing committee. This is really an informative discussion. It's my, I would say, my second time with this round of webinars, which is really giving me much information needed for. I'm like kind of a researcher, so which is very important to give context about the issue. One of a question for Mr. Dr. Gideon is that one is the issue of bringing new blood to the negotiations, to the whole aspect of engineering and societal work of our resources. So in this regard, how can we involve to contribute to our country, to our home in the process? For instance, I'm working from US and involved around conflict issues, and I really would like to contribute in studies around those areas, negotiation areas.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much, Dr. Gideon. The presentation was awesome, and I really understand what the situation is. Just my question is not really a question, but it's just to understand how we could approach to win-minding hearts of the world or the international community, the way we approach it. We know that Egypt has got a large amount of groundwater source, and this aquifer, they've never envisaged to use it, and but however, Libya has managed to do so and obtained lots of water and using it properly. What is there a means of, are we advocating this to the world that Egypt could use this aquifer, or how we could address this in order to win mining hearts of the international community, so that Egypt could, the free loading of water could minimize by using this aquifer.
Okay, thank you. One more.
Thank you very much, Engineer Gideon, for giving us a very instructive presentation. So far, whenever I look at discussions, we seem to be coming from a defensive position, and we don't seem to take the offensive position. And I'm wondering why we don't do that. A few things that I think might help, for instance, is whenever we have presentations, we don't seem to show our victims. Millions of Ethiopians have died because of the Nile policy, yet I didn't see a single picture of somebody starving in Ethiopia in the presentation slides. Something like that might make people aware of what's going on. The Egyptians say we are going to not have enough water to drink, yet all they need for drinking is 4 billion cubic meters, and they are taking 55 billion. The High Aswan Dam is a dam which is wasting too much water. Should it even exist? Shouldn't we ask questions about why is it there in the first place? The dam should have been built upstream in the countries where it's cooler. Another thing I think of is, like, why shouldn't we include something like desalination in the discussions, where Egypt and Sudan would sign up to agreements where they would start working on desalination and reducing their dependence on the Nile to the point that upstream countries get substantial share from the Nile resources. So aren't these questions that we should raise in the negotiations? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Gideon. I actually have posted my question on the chat window. It is about the capacity factor that is used to calculate the annual electricity that is expected to be generated from this 5,150 megawatts. I'm asking this question because I see different numbers, some as low as 23%, 26%, and so on and so forth. I want you to give me an answer to this question only if it is not a sensitive number, okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, well, Engineer Gideon.
Well, very difficult questions, some of them, but let me try and respond to them. I think Dr. Yared's question of involvement, that's why in my key messages, that we really need the support of the diaspora, the support of universities, and any willing individual group in his capacity in this negotiation or in the development of the water resource of Ethiopia can get involved through the Ministry of Water, Irrigation and Energy, and from the Ministry of also Foreign Affairs. And aquifer issues, I have raised it in my presentation also. The desalination issue, in terms of reducing their reliance on the Nile. By the way, Egypt has started some commendable projects with regards to desalination, and they need to continue doing more of that. And they need to continue exploiting the Nubian aquifer, and some estimate it will take them to maybe 500, 1,000 years in the rate of, their use now 55 or so billion cubic meters per year. Ilya has exploited that. It's a question of investment, and desalination, cost of desalination has been reducing over the years, so they should really resort to that. I think Dr. Gabriel's question also revolves around our communication and diplomatic approach in terms of convincing the international community. But the factors you have raised, like the hard issue, wasting water through evaporation, the desalination issues, I have raised them, and also the drought period where millions of people were affected in Ethiopia and not affected in the two downstream countries. But during the negotiation, these issues have been also raised when the issue of water sharing comes along. So the justifications revolve for a fair share of Ethiopia around this reduction of reliance on the Nile issue, the issue of desalination, Nubian aquifer, efficient water use. These are always raised also. Dr. Bai, the capacity factor used to be 0.29. Now we have removed 3 turbines, as you know, from 16 to 13 turbines. Now it is around 0.3. So the plant factor has been, the efficiency factor has been raised to that level now. If I have responded adequately, I don't know. You may come back to some of questions if I am not very clear.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I know we're coming close. If you just oblige, give us the opportunity, just another 5 minutes, to conclude this. Let me first give the opportunity to Ato Ndimageng Masresha, who is the chairman of the New York Tri-State GERD Support. Ato Ndimageng, please.
Thank you, Dr. Nusrat, and the moderator. In fact, you did a good job. I would like to thank Engineer Gideon for accepting our invitation on behalf of the GERD group, the support group. Not only that, we are proud of the negotiating team, like the Ethiopian government, for being firm on negotiating with a reasonable, equitable, and reasonable share of the water. So we are proud of you guys, and history will be, I think, remembers you for years to come. So thank you very much for coming, and the participants.
It's really wonderful to see all these people interested. We have every month a webinar, so please join us, visit our website, and thank you, Dr. Basrat, for moderating this wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. In my case, my concluding remarks, I'm going to defer it to our, again, Sudanese colleague, the ex-Minister of Irrigation, Dr. Osman. I want you to go back to take you back to that interview that he had on Dialogue Horizon, which we'll post it on the website because it's really, I find it really fascinating. The key message that he has basically is that on something like this, we have to think big. We have to look beyond our borders. We have to look at mutual benefits, joint benefits. And so that is really the message that I would like to leave. So thank you very much, all of you, for participating. Please do contact us, especially the various GERD support groups, because we'd like to network, join forces, coordinate, and learn from each other. So with that, Ato Akilu, if you would kindly, and let me thank also our organizing committee, because we have a lot of people in the organizing committee that have been help person. So thank you very much. But let's conclude. Of course, Engineer Gideon, I should really thank you. Really proud of you. And I think the end is coming. We're going to see the benefit of it. And it will be a benefit not only to Ethiopia, certainly a benefit both to Sudan and Egypt and the neighboring countries. This ends our webinar. And until next time, please visit our website. Thank you.